Welcome to 500 Coffees for the Soul. My name is Chris Barton. I'm really glad you can join me today. I'm on a mission of lifetime learning, speaking to amazing people who have great stories. Today's is a fantastic one. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to 500 Coffees for the Soul. This is my first podcast for 2024. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to try something a little bit different for podcast one today. Rather than my normal fantastic guests, and I've got a whole group of amazing guests lined up for 2024. I cannot believe who's agreed to come on the podcast. So super excited to share those conversations with you throughout the year. But to start off this year, I want to do a little bit of review of 2023 and share my key learnings from my podcast guests. And, you know, they're really pivotal and have been really helpful for me, and I hope you guys enjoy them also. The first amazing, learning I got from my podcast guests in 2023 is around success. You know, and what does success mean? You know, it's different for everyone, and it can be actually different at different times in our lives. But it's one thing that keeps coming up, and you see it on social media heaps as well. So I want to have a bit of a chat about my key learnings from my research and my guests in 2023 around success. And the first learning I wanted to share with everyone is that there isn't a golden ticket, or there isn't this one thing you can do to be successful. But there is a formula. And there's a formula of a number of things and processes that you follow. And if you do that, it can make a significant difference in the probability that you're going to achieve your goals. And the first one, which is really important for success, is it intrinsic or is it extrinsic motivation that drives you? You tend to find that the people who are most successful, whatever that means to them, is they're following their purpose or they're passionate about something, and that motivates them internally to achieve. You know, if you're motivated extrinsically by a financial reward like a bonus or nice words from someone, it can motivate you in the short term, but long term, the data and the research shows it doesn't help. And there's a big conversation about how, we raise kids around this in school and the sporting environment. That's for another time. But I'm a big believer that if you haven't got the intrinsic motivation to follow your goals, you generally will struggle to be successful in them. The second thing that I learned, which I think is a really important one, is take action. And sometimes people worry about taking action because they don't think they're ready. But without action, you can never be successful. And sometimes taking action before you're ready actually gets you to the point you need to be to get going. So get going and take action. Take that risk. And you will find that really will leapfrog you, towards your goals and being successful, whatever that means to you. The third one, and I think this is a really important one as well, is it's down to behaviours. So there isn't a magic ticket, but small, consistent behaviours over a long period of time make a huge difference to your success. So have a think about that. What do I do every day to reach those goals that I have to be successful? And it may only be moving the dial slightly every day in a different way, but if you can continue to do that with small, actionable behaviours, that's far, far more valuable than looking, for that big picture or that big ticket item that's going to make a huge difference to your success. And I think finally, the last one I learned from my conversations last year was around grit and determination. You know, as you get older, we all tend to learn that we don't live in a perfect world and things do go wrong. And if you give up too soon on your goals, your chance of success is obviously going to be diminished. Now, there's obviously sometimes where you're chasing success in the wrong path for you and you need to listen to that. But the most successful people, the biggest commonality you see between them is grit. Things will go wrong. Things will stop you. Things can slow you down, but you have to continue to progress forward, even if it's very slowly, and that's a huge determining factor. So those 4 things I think are the biggest lessons that I've learned around success in 2023 from my podcast guests. I'd love your comments and thoughts on those. Lesson number 2 from my 2023 podcast is a quick one, but it's one that definitely stuck with me, and it's pretty simple. Be nice. You know, in our fast-paced world that we live in now, every day you can go out and you can experience that people are stressed, there's high levels of anxiety, people are in a rush. But maybe we all need to just take a breath and think about being nice. I don't think anybody lies on their deathbed if you have the privilege one day of being able to do that and look back and go, I wish I was more stressed, or I wish I was more anxious, or I wish I lived a faster life and didn't build relationships with people. Or I wish I was angrier and more tense. I don't think anyone does that. So let's think about being a little bit nice to everybody, not just to everyone, but to ourselves. Forgive ourselves, forgive other people. If we have an attitude of giving back to people and being kind, I've generally found that our happiness increases. So have a think about that as you progress through your 2024 and you have that opportunity and you're at those crossroads where something does make you angry. It's okay to be nice. Lesson number 3 from 2023 and my podcast and my research is around happiness. And that's a topic that continues to come up, you know, on social media and online consistently, because generally, particularly in the Western world at the moment, many people aren't happy. And is there a process around building your own personal happiness? You know, it's going to be different for every person, but there's definitely some commonality of themes that I've learned in the last year from my research that I wanted to share with everyone. And the first one is probably that the understanding that the world isn't fair. You know, things are going to go wrong. You are going to have challenges. You are going to have illness. Things won't always go well in our lives. And if you've got an understanding and appreciation of that, you can actually look for the joy and happiness in all times, not just when times are going well, but also when times are not going well. But if you're steadfast on believing that, you know, you can only be happy when things go well, you're probably only going to be happy 50% of the time. So that's definitely the first one. The second one is definitely appreciating and understanding if when something goes wrong or you have an issue or a challenge, is it a real problem? You know, or is it something you've catastrophized or imagined in your mind? And I'm definitely guilty of that when things happen at times. But I think 95% of the time, the majority of the time, we imagine things to be a lot worse than they are. And that definitely increases our anxiety. And if you are imagining something or making it worse than it is, let it go. If you can learn to let it go, you definitely increase your happiness. I think the third thing around that is if you have got a problem or a challenge and it is real, and sometimes it's not imagined or you haven't catastrophized something, there's a legitimate problem. It might be a problem with your boss, it might be an argument with your partner or your kids. There's legitimate problems out there. I think I've learned that the key is to deal with them fast and not let them linger. And sometimes that requires an honest conversation with someone. But if you can have an honest conversation with someone, get it out in the open and solve problems fast, it really does reduce your anxiety levels and increase your happiness. So I think that's the third thing. And I think the fourth thing I've learned from my conversations last year in my podcast in 2023 is around sometimes you have to let things go. If it's out of your control, if it is a legitimate problem or it's an issue or something that's bad that's happened to you, you're not catastrophizing it or imagining it, but you can't fix it. And sometimes you just can't repair some things. You have to learn to let it go. I see way too many people holding on to pain from years and years before, which is affecting their happiness today. And it's much easier said than done. I know what I'm saying is really easy, and there's a process around letting things go. But it's not until you can let things go that you can once again enjoy happiness in that moment. So I think they're my 4 key learnings from happiness in 2023 through my podcast. I would love everyone's thoughts and opinions on what I've just shared with those. Lesson number 4 I gained from my podcast in 2023 is around possessions and experiences. And I've, definitely learnt in the last few years in my conversations with so many people that I'm a believer now in prioritizing experiences over possessions. And that's actually, I think, a huge lesson that I wish I knew when I was in my 20s. I'm in my late 40s now and I'm only really discovering it. I wish I'd learnt that much earlier. So it's a lesson that I hope more parents and teachers and educators and coaches can share with young people. The challenge with possessions is they give short-term gratification, but particularly with some possessions, they trap people for life. They go into debt to get a car, or they go into debt to get a house, and they get caught. They get trapped in a cycle which they can never really get out of. And never can really experience some of the great experiences in life that they would have if they weren't caught in that trap. And possessions, in many ways they are a trap. We're experiences of the things that I think last forever. And, when you are lying there in your final days looking back on your life, it's the experiences that you're going to remember, not the possessions. So I think that's a great one that I learned from last year. Experiences over possessions, and particularly if you're in a position to influence young people, I say go out there and give them, that green light to go after life's experiences, because that's where the great joy will come from. Love your thoughts on this conversation. Please, let me know what you think. I'm going to finish off the podcast with the 5th lesson I learned throughout my podcast in 2023. And this is actually 3 quick ones, but they've worked for me and I hope they can add value to you guys. The first is 5 and 5. And 5 and 5 is a little rule that I follow that I think about when something goes wrong. And that's if something impacts me, there's a challenge, there's a problem. If it's not going to affect me in 5 years' time, I don't give it more than 5 minutes of thought. I just let it go. And I think that's really been helpful for me. Classic example is you're at a set of lights, you're sitting there, you're a bit slow to take off. We've all been here. Someone from behind beeps you. You've had a bit of a bad day, an argument with someone, and the first thing you want to do is turn around and scream at them or honk the horn back. But in reality, you got to let it go. That's not going to affect you in 5 years' time. So don't even give that one 5 seconds, let alone 5 minutes. So that 5 and 5 rule's been really valuable to me. The second one's around failure. And maybe failure isn't the right word, but investing in loss is probably a better one. I think in the world we live in, the extrinsically motivated world we've now got, people are too focused on winning all the time. But the problem is when you do well and you win, often people tell you what a great job you've done when you haven't always done that. It might be a sporting match where you went out and won, but you didn't follow any of your coach's advice, so you didn't do anything, you practiced, you just lucked into a win. But everyone tells you what a great job you did. So you don't actually get any lessons from it. I think the best lessons we actually get in life is when we make mistakes or we lose and we think about it. We take the time to learn from that and we move forward. And if you can do that, even when you win or things are going well, that's actually what really successful people can do. So it's taking those lessons from failure or investing in your loss makes a huge difference. And I think the third one, quick one, is around your peer or social group. You really, really are influenced most by the people closest to you. And you can't always choose your family, or you can't choose your family, but you can definitely choose your friends or who you spend the most significant time with. Because those that you spend the most significant time with are going to have the greatest impact in your life. So if you've got people that you choose to spend time with who are going in opposite directions than you are, it really, really is going to impact your levels of success, your happiness, your feelings of worth. So you have to be a little bit choosy and choose who you spend the most amount of time with. Those 5 people who are closest to you Are they really impacting you in a positive way and moving in the same direction that you are? And if they're not, you have to have a really big think about that. So I hope everybody's enjoyed those 5 lessons I've shared in my first podcast for 2024. Really great to be back with you guys. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you soon and chatting to my February guests. I hope you guys can tune in then. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed the podcast, come visit me at chrisbarton.com.au and check out some of our other podcasts and some of the other cool stuff I'm up to.